Despite the resistance and obstacles that immigrant communities face as they enter and reside in the U.S., they remain a significant contributor to the U.S. economy. People who are undocumented make sizable contributions to their state's economy and finances, as well as their local community. Like other residents, they work, pay taxes, and shop at local businesses. The nation's estimated 11 million immigrants who are undocumented pay nearly 12 billion annually in state and local taxes, a sum that could grow to nearly 14 billion if they had a pathway to citizenship. They also enrich their extended families and communities just as other residents do, through everyday activities such as visiting their place of worship, mentoring young people, and volunteering. It's important that we support immigration policies that promote wealth for immigrants who are undocumented, as it also carries over for their families and the states that they live in. It's also important to have states that promote opportunities for all of us residents.
As social workers, we work with individuals who are immigrants or who are family members of immigrants in a variety of ways in a micro setting. This might include case management, where we support them in finding access to resources and determining which resources they are available to use and which resources might not be worth their time due to constraints. We can support them in individual therapy, helping them process a variety of issues that may or may not be related to their immigrant status. We can provide support as being advocates for them in the community and helping them find new resources. And we can provide them support for legal issues, vocational job situations, and or with language barriers that they might face in the community. When doing this work, it's important to remember the ethics of service, social justice, dignity and worth of the person, and the importance of human relationships as we work with each of these clients. In these roles, we likely will support these individuals as it relates to their immigration status with issues related to safety, their basic needs, coaching, legal advice, identity exploration, and healing from potential trauma. When we work with these individuals, it's really important to consider cultural awareness and sensitivity, both for their current location, but also where they come from, their familial relationships and how those might or may not be important to them, and access to services as they likely will be limited due to their immigration status. When working with clients, it's important to consider safety. For individuals, for immigrants, it'll be really important to educate yourself on the impact of policies on clients that you may work with, and it's important to not assume anyone's immigration status. To be a positive support, familiarize yourself with resources that could help support clients and provide them in spaces such as bathrooms or waiting rooms, where clients can have access to them without having to identify their immigration status to you or others in the area. Also, it will be important to stay up to date on local ICE raids and current levels of risk for individuals so that you can help them with staying safe. There's some neat resources out there that provide really clear handouts for clients in a variety of languages and some different hotlines or places to check in about safety and activity. These are a few examples of resources that you can provide to clients that are clear and concise and also could inform other folks who might not know exactly what's going on with immigration in our country right now. Working in a clinical setting, it's important to understand the significance of various cultures to an individual and support them in exploration of what their identity means. For a lot of people, they might be struggling with a sense of home, a sense of place, and difficulty physically seeing or visiting family, which may lead to existential questions for them. It'll be helpful to, for some folks, process some conflicts they have currently with xenophobia, racism, and with these practices, some theories to consider are theories related to empowerment, narrative, psychodynamic grief work, or a strengths-based approach. Really just supporting clients in starting to think about how levels of oppression, policies, and interactions with those in their community are impacting them and who they want to be. And it can be really supportive to help them consider their narrative or their grief in ways that they can move forward and take action. For many immigrants, it's important to know that they may have experienced trauma and likely will continue to experience trauma. Although individuals all have their own experience, there's potential for immigrants to have experienced trauma in their country of origin, during their transit, and currently in their location where they live. All of those are potentials, maybe spaces for healing for them. So as a provider, it's important to acknowledge and be aware of the potential for things such as generational trauma, history of political violence, current experiences related to xenophobia, exploitation, and other times where they may have felt powerless or fearful. Knowing that this won't be the case for every individual, but having it as a consideration for something that might be impacting them. And with that, knowing that each individual is unique and considering the importance of intersectionality, knowing that things such as gender, sexuality, and age will also vary and impact clients differently. With that, it's important to recognize that many immigrants have significant resilience, which is also expressed in their physical and mental health. So acknowledging and supporting clients in recognizing that resilience that they have. Some potential theories for supporting work in the trauma area of individuals' lives is, again, narrative theory, some EMDR, brain spotting, Hakomi, and other somatic experiencing for these clients.
Current issues and events. Immigration is a massive issue in the United States, as we've discussed throughout the duration of this presentation. Approximately 14% of the entire United States population is comprised of immigrants and their family members. There are approximately 55,000 individuals currently locked up in ICE detainment centers in the United States. Since May of this year, the average incarceration length in an ICE detainment center has increased from 28 days to 46 days, respectively, almost doubling. As of June 9, 2019, 24 individuals have died in ICE detainment facilities during the Trump administration, with at least an additional 4 others dying shortly after their release. According to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Death Detainee Report, 4 more individuals have died while being detained since the June 9th report. When looking at other punitive policies, the Trump administration has begun drafting plans to take DNA samples from ICE detainees and migrants crossing the border to be placed in a database, a practice that is usually reserved for criminals and opens up a series of other problems, as this policy is very reminiscent of the policies that were put in place during the war on drugs that ended up ultimately just targeting minority populations and low-income marginalized communities.
$9.8 billion have been secured by the U.S. government since 2017 for border wall construction, and prior to Trump's election, 654 miles of barriers along the southern border already existed for immigration security and protection purposes. Since his election, only a total of 66 miles of replacement walls and secondary border walls have been constructed. So not a single mile of additional wall has actually been put up along the US-Mexico border since 2016.
Now we will take a look at some of the current debates both for and against immigration reform. First, we'll start with some of the more popular debates against immigration. So, the first one being immigrants will take American jobs and drive wages down. Now, this isn't necessarily true, as in reality, the displacement effect of Americans in the workforce due to immigration is extremely small. For the most part, immigrants often compete with other immigrants for lower-level employment opportunities due to lack of access to higher education, language barriers, stigma, and a lot of other marginalizations. Immigrants actually contribute to the expansion of employment opportunities in most regions as they contribute to supply and demand within the geographic locations in which they reside. And research shows that immigration has actually positively contributed to the overall wage increases and income of American citizens. Another common debate against immigration reform is immigrants abuse the welfare state, and this increases government debt. Now, this is not also true, as most immigrants do not have access to welfare in the first 5 years, despite popular belief. There are some exceptions to that. Immigrants are less likely to utilize means-tested welfare benefits when compared to American-born individuals receiving the same benefits. If low-income American-born individuals utilize welfare benefits at the same rate as immigrant families, the program would be 42% smaller. And research has shown that immigrants have about a net zero impact on government budgets. A third debate against immigration reform is immigration increases crime rates and terrorism. However, studies show that immigrants are actually far less likely to be incarcerated for violent property crimes than their American-born counterparts. For Texas, who tracks arrest and immigrant status for specific crimes, reported that in 2015 there were 1,794 convictions per 100,000 U.S.-born individuals, contrasted with 782 convictions per 100,000 illegal immigrants, and 262 convictions per 100,000 legal immigrants. This demonstrates that both illegal and legal immigrants are committing crimes at much lower rates than U.S.-born individuals. Though we already provided counterpoints to some of the debates against immigration reform, we'll take a look at some of the current debates in support of immigration. So immigrants contribute more tax than they accept in government benefits, with undocumented immigrants paying an estimated $11.6 billion in taxes per year, which makes them valuable assets to the country from a financial standpoint, despite what some popular opponents may argue. Immigrants often will take and work jobs that are not often of interest to many native-born Americans, which helps boost parts of the economy. Immigration helps offset a falling birth rate in the United States that will help sustain the economy for generations to come. And immigration creates valuable cultural diversity and acts as an opportunity for the United States to become a more culturally competent and inclusive nation. When looking at some recent trends in immigration, it's really interesting to see how immigration has, especially from the southern border perspective, has decreased massively since 2000 to 2018. There has been a substantial reduction in illegal immigrant apprehensions in southern U.S. border regions in the last decade. From 2016 to 2018, there were 408,000, 303,000, and 396,000 apprehensions, respectively, compared to the 2004-2006 range, where there were over 1 million in all 3 of those years. Mexican immigrants residing illegally in the United States has also declined by 2 million since 2007, while Central and South American immigration has increased. This particular statistic is interesting, as unfortunately Mexican immigrants seem to catch the brunt of negative stigma and hatred from government and anti-immigration proponents.